Hi, I'm Dr. Bill Carlazon, Principal Editor of NPP Digital Psychiatry and Neuroscience. Welcome to the DPN Deep Dive, our journal's AI-generated podcast that summarizes DPN articles in short, accessible episodes. Each episode is created using Google's Notebook LM, refined by our tech-savvy social media team, and approved by the authors to ensure clarity, accuracy, and approachability. Let's dive into this episode to explore the latest research in digital psychiatry and neuroscience.
Okay, so when you think about cognitive tests, you usually focus on the score, right? The average. But what if that's not the whole story? Imagine, your bank balance averages $10,000. Sounds okay. But what if one day it's $100 and the next it's 20 grand? That huge swing, that variability, that's the real issue maybe. So we're asking, could that kind of day-to-day fluctuation in your cognitive performance, that consistency or lack of it, be a better clue about brain health than just one average number?
Yeah, exactly. And that fluctuation, that's what we researchers call intra-individual variability. Traditional cognitive tests, the kind you do in a lab or clinic, they're limited. They give you one snapshot. That's it. They just can't capture that natural up and down we all have day to day. So that single average score could be a bit misleading, but now with smartphone-based testing, sometimes called ecological momentary cognitive testing, we can get lots of little snapshots in real life. And that finally lets us measure this day-to-day consistency.
Okay, interesting. So let's dive into that. We're looking at a specific study today that digs into this relationship. It's from researchers at the University of California, San Diego, and the title is Exploring the Relationship Between Mean Performance and Within-Person Variability on Smartphone-Based Cognitive Testing in Adults Across the Lifespan.
Yeah.
Quite a mouthful.
Yes, quite a mouthful. But the idea is straightforward. They basically threw two different groups. First, a big group of general adults, sort of a baseline. And second, a group of older adults. This group had higher rates of mild cognitive impairment, so potentially more at risk.
Mm-hmm.
And they used these quick smartphone tests measuring things like memory, processing speed, core cognitive stuff.
Right, and what was the big finding? What did they discover when they compared performance and consistency?
Well, this was really the key takeaway, and it held up across both groups, the younger, healthier ones and the older, higher-risk ones. It turns out the single biggest thing linked to how consistent someone was actually their average performance level.
Okay, so unpack that a little. What does that mean practically?
It means that people who generally scored better on average, they also tended to have less variability. Their scores were more stable day to day. So better performance went hand in hand with greater consistency. If you were good, you were reliably good. It sort of suggests a more robust cognitive system, maybe.
Huh. Okay. Better scores, more consistency. That makes intuitive sense, but I think I saw a nuance in there. Something about harder tasks.
Ah, yes, good catch. There was a twist. While that pattern held for most tests, on some really difficult ones, certain working memory tasks, for example, they saw the opposite. For those really tough tasks, sometimes better average performance was linked to more variability.
Wait, okay, so higher scores meant more scatter on the hard stuff. How does that work? That feels backward.
It does seem a bit counterintuitive at first, yeah. But think about it this way. If a task is super hard, the top performers might be hitting the ceiling of the test, right? They can't really score much higher, so any little fluctuation, maybe they're tired one day, distracted another, it shows up as a dip. They only have room to go down, which makes their scores look more variable overall.
Okay. That makes sense. Ceiling effects.
Exactly. But broadly speaking, the main finding holes, lower average scores, were generally linked with more day-to-day scatter. And this really suggests that these mobile tests, these smartphone assessments, they could be a really valuable tool. They give us insight beyond just that single snapshot from traditional tests.
Okay, this sounds really promising. A new way to maybe track brain health, looking at consistency. But like with all research, there must be limitations, right? The fine print.
Oh, absolutely. The researchers were careful to point out a couple of things. First, the generalizability, especially for that older adult group. It wasn't super diverse, mostly non-Hispanic white participants, and highly educated. So we need to be careful applying these findings to everyone.
Right. So maybe different results in different populations?
Possibly. And second, they used a fairly low number of tests per person, only 4 times for each task to estimate that day-to-day variability.
Yeah.
So they did that to make the study feasible. People wouldn't do dozens of tests. But ideally, more data points would give an even clearer picture of someone's true consistency.
Got it. So representative sample issues and maybe needing more data points. Still, what's the big picture implication here? What should we be thinking about?
Well, I think the big takeaway connects back to what you said at the start. This idea that maybe consistency or variability is really crucial. You could have someone who scores normal on a traditional one-off test,
Sure.
but if their performance is actually bouncing around wildly day to day when you measure it repeatedly, that high variability, that inconsistency, that might actually be an early warning sign, a preclinical marker perhaps for someone who's at risk of cognitive decline down the road, even if their average score looks okay right now.
So the way your score fluctuates might be as important, maybe even more important than the score itself.
It really could be.
Right.
It adds a whole new dimension to how we think about and measure cognitive health.
Fascinating stuff. Really makes you think differently about those scores.
Thanks for listening to the DPN Deep Dive. Until next time.